Lately, I've gotten a lot of questions about what hosting I'm using and if I need to do a local installation where we, use XAMPP or WAMP on our computers to install WordPress and get it running and then, build out the sites, or if we can just build directly on a hosting setup. And when I first released SERPShaker, the technology that was out there, especially for hosting, especially the PHP versions and everything like that, weren't as advanced as they are today. So it made sense to kind of have a local installation of WordPress where you could build out your sites and then basically make a copy of that and push it live. Nowadays, you really don't have to do that. PHP has advanced a lot. Hosting setups have advanced a lot to where we can just build directly on our website without needing to overcomplicate things. So I wanted to make this video to kind of walk you through the process of the company that I'm using now, why I like it, how it makes things a lot easier. I'll even show you how to kind of create a skeleton setup that I've showed in some of my past videos. But the new way of doing it, where it's basically makes it just a one-click type setup to where you can launch a brand new website with all your settings good to go, and then you can just kind of build out the site from there. So the company that I'm using nowadays for all my development work and for just programming and everything else is Cloudways. And I'll have the link below the video here so you can click on that. And they do have a free trial, so you can go ahead and try it out and see if it's something that you would like to continue using without even having to spend any of your own money. So this whole video is going to actually take you step by step through the whole process and take you from, starting brand new, not even having an account, to launching a website and getting it live that you can start building out with SERPShaker. So, when you first click on the link below, just go ahead and go over to the start free area. It's going to ask you to go ahead and register. So I'm going to go ahead and register an account. I do obviously have an account already, but it's got all my personal stuff, my money sites, all that. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a brand new account on here. And then it asks you, what you consider yourself. You can just say you're a blogger, 0 to 50 on hosting. You agree to their terms of service, and then you can start for free. So right away, it kind of lets you, go ahead and get started without even having to put anything. Now, it does ask that you verify your account. And so it won't let you launch anything until you verify that. So that just basically means that they need to send you a text message. So you go ahead and I'm going to go through this real quick. I'll pause the video, and then once it's verified, then we'll be able to continue the video. Okay, so I went ahead and verified with phone and verified email. And now it allows us to actually launch a server. So the first thing that you need to do is you're going to pick which kind of server you want to use. And the great thing about Cloudways is that it actually lets you choose from different server companies. So you've got DigitalOcean, Linode, Vultr, AWS, and the Google Cloud. Depending on which one you choose, the pricing will change. What I like to use for mine, the cheapest ones to kind of start out with, is the DigitalOcean 1 gigabyte setup. Now, it's going to tell you that 2 gigabyte or higher is recommended um, for production websites. I honestly have a couple of these 1 gigabyte ones running without any issues. I like to start out with them because you do have the ability to kind of size up once you reach a certain point. So if you build a website and you notice that it's starting to get traffic and whatnot, then you can actually go ahead and increase your server size. You can't go back down, but you can always go up. So I like to start at the lowest possible just so that I can start, I tend to bootstrap everything. So for $10 a month, you can get started and you can kind of just test the waters without having to spend a whole lot of money. The other thing you need to do is choose your location, obviously wherever you're going to get the most traffic from for these websites. So if you're building a US based site, then you want to either do New York or San Francisco. I typically just choose the New York data center. Now, other thing we have to choose is the application. They give you a couple different options, but usually the one you're going to go with is just WordPress, and it's going to have the latest one there. Make sure you name your application, so we can just do something like SERPShaker test, what the name of the server is, so we can say server 1, and the project. So these are all things that you'll be able to change later, but this is just so they organize things out by project or by server or by, the actual name of the application. So those are, different things that you'll be able to change and edit later if you want. This is just to kind of give you an example. Now notice when we chose WordPress, it automatically changed this back to 2 GB. We do want to start out with the 1 GB. Don't, ignore the warning here, and you'll see that it's just a $10 monthly, and it says, you will not be charged during the trial period. So you can actually test it out without getting anything charged. And then we'll go ahead and click launch now. So what this is doing is basically setting up this server with DigitalOcean and making it to where you can go ahead and start building on this particular server. So you'll notice here, and right now it's kind of setting up the server and whatnot, but you'll notice that we have servers and applications. So servers is actually just, the hosting server itself, and then applications will be the individual websites within that server, and you can have multiple applications per server. You don't need a brand new server for each, so you're not paying $10 for every single, for every website that you're adding, you're not paying an extra $10. You can, fit a couple different websites on the server, and obviously what you can fit and what you can run will be dependent on the size of the websites, how much traffic they actually get, because most of these websites, even if you're building 15, 20,000 pages, will have about 560, 600 megabytes of data that they take up. So what it's doing right now, it's actually setting up the server, and at the same time, it's installing WordPress and getting it all set up within that server. So you never have to go through the process of having to manually install WordPress or, create the database or do anything like that. It automatically does it all. And notice that up to this point, we haven't even done anything with the domain name. So one of the great things about it that I love is that I can easily spin up applications without even having to purchase a domain name. And I can do the full setup of, all the WordPress configuration and everything without even having a domain name. So that once it's ready to go, I can actually just go ahead and purchase a domain name. So, but in this video, I do want to show you what that's like, because it is, it can get a little bit technical. So I want to take that aspect of it and make it a little bit easier for you, especially if this is the first time you're dealing with DNS or anything like that. But I'll pick up a cheap domain name and point it to the application, and you can see how that works out so that you know exactly what you need to do. So as you can see now, we've got the green, everything stopped over here, and we've got the one server that's live. And if we switch this over to applications, we will be able to see the application that, the SERPShaker test that we put on there. So we'll go ahead and click on that. And notice that it automatically kind of gives us all the access details. It already created the application URL, we've got access to the admin panel, we've got the database access if we need it. Most of the time you're not going to be dealing with any of this. The only thing you're going to be dealing with is the launching the application directly and logging into it. So if we click on that, it's actually going to go ahead and open up this login information, or this WP admin area, and I'm going to go ahead and copy the login information. So we can copy that, and then the password, you can just click it to copy it as well. So this is just a basic WordPress installation with some modifications to work specifically with Cloudways. They add their notice that they've got Breeze, which is their caching plugin, so it just makes things run a little bit quicker. on Cloudways specifically. But what I'm going to use this installation, I'm actually not going to add a domain to this one. Let's just say that this will be our skeleton setup. So what I mean by skeleton is like a template that we would be able to use and replicate and to be able to go ahead and actually use for our website. So if we want to go ahead and set it up in such a way where we've got our plugins added on here, we've got, whatever theme we like to use, and, because every time that you have to do that for a new installation, you have to add your license keys, you got to add, the different settings that you want. So for this one, I'm just going to keep it very simple. I'm going to, change a couple things in the settings as far as, for example, like the permalinks. We want to change that to a post name setup. That's typically something that I always do for my SERPShaker sites, and just in general, I always set up with a post name setup. And then also the other thing would be adding the SERPShaker plugin. But this would be a great time to kind of like if you've got a particular theme that you like to use. For example, it comes with all the different ones. Let's say we don't want all these other ones. We just want to be able to keep the latest one. So we can delete these. We don't have to bring them over to our other installation. We can also go over to the post. They usually have some kind of sample post, so we can go ahead and get rid of that one. We can empty that out. And then sometimes they'll have like a sample page as well. If you want to get rid of that, you can. I'm just going to leave it like that. But then, like I said, the main plugin we need is SERPShaker. So in this case, we would just go ahead and upload it, install that. And, go ahead and enter our licensing setup so that our license details, so that it's good to go whenever we do launch this on a new website. We don't have to repeat this process over and over again. So I've gone ahead and activated SERPShaker. It's good to go. Now, if you had a particular setup where you use the same shortcodes over and over again in every single one of your builds, then this will be a great time to also go ahead and add those shortcodes in there. If you change it up every time, then there's no need to pre-add the shortcodes. But in essence, you try to make this, you try to minimize the time that you'll spend on each one by adding the themes, the plugins, everything that you use on a regular basis. So for example, I know one theme that I'll use, or one plugin that I'll use a lot, is Yoast SEO. So we can go ahead and install that on here. Make sure that that's good to go. Another one would be Pretty Links, if I'm going to be doing any kind of affiliate linking out. Okay, so now I've got my plugins added. This will be what I would call my skeleton setup. Everything that, we've got the plugins, we've got the theme, we've got the all the licenses added for the different things. And so at this moment, I can actually go back to my Cloudways area and just to kind of keep things simple for myself. I noticed I mentioned that you can edit the name of the applications and everything. So I would just name this SERPShaker template. So when I'm looking at it, when I click on applications over here, I can see that this is the template that I want to use. Now, let's say that we want to go ahead and take this template and actually use it to create a fresh website from it. So, you go over to applications, we click the three little dots here, and it says clone app. So now we can select the server. So, if we've only got one server, it'll be that same one. And then we want to hit continue. And we'll wait a second for it to, basically it checks to see, make sure you've got enough space on the server and, that it can actually do the clone that it needs to do. But then you can see here that, it's cloning the application, and it says that it may take a while. I've noticed, if it's just a simple WordPress application with just a few plugins, so it won't take that long, maybe 2 to 3 minutes for it to launch it. So I'll pause the video while it's doing that. Okay, so now it's telling me that it's complete. And we see, I clicked on, we go back over to applications, we see here that we have this one that's named cloned. So now let's say that I want to build out a full website with this. We want to go ahead and get a domain name for it. So I'll get a cheap domain name to be able to do this. But let's say we're just going to call it, I like to call the apps actually the domain name so that I know exactly what we're dealing with. So let's actually jump over to the domain name area. So I'm going to go over to Namecheap. I was doing a search beforehand, but so we've got Cloudways hosting that club. They're cheap right now, so I'm going to use that to be able to just run that through. I'm going to check out with that. So as I go through and I'm putting in my information, let me go ahead and pause this, but I'll come back to the screen so I can show you the settings that we need to do. Okay, so I've purchased the domain Cloudways hosting that club. What I want to do now is go back over to Cloudways, and I mentioned that I would want to change the name of the application here, so I'm just going to change it to Cloudways hosting that club, so I know that this is what that domain name is, or the domain name that's associated with this app. The name itself, whenever you edit this name up here, it's just for your, for your purposes, so that when you look over at applications, you know exactly what you're dealing with when you click on it. So for myself, I found that it's just best to put the domain name on there, but you do whatever organization method works for you. But now we need to set this up in such a way that we can actually go ahead and access it whenever we see WordPress or the application URL, we want to have that domain name. So the way you do that is you actually head on over to domain management, and then you put in your primary domain here. You can either do www dot or just without it, whatever's your preferred way of doing it. I typically do without the www, so I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm going to click Save Changes. And then at this point, if we go over to Access Details, it'll have this information here, but we actually haven't done anything at the registrar, which is Namecheap in my case. We haven't done anything at the registrar to actually tell the domain name to point to this. So none of these will work until we set that up. But before we do that, let's go ahead and get the SSL certificate set up as well, because one of the great things about Cloudways is that it lets you do it for free, super easily. So we can just go ahead and use any email address here. I'm just going to do, I usually set up an info email associated with the domain. And then we put in the domain name. In our case, and whatever you put here has to match what you put up in the domain management. So if you did www, make sure you add those www in there. But I did it without, so I'm just going to set it up like this, and then I'm going to go ahead and install certificate. So it takes a second to go ahead and install that certificate. And actually gave me an error because it says that the domain name is not pointed to the server yet. So it looks like we actually have to do the setup first in Namecheap. So let's go ahead and jump over to that. And what you're going to need is you're going to need the IP address of the server, which is, it's going to be over here on the right hand side. Just going to click it and it's going to copy that. So when you head on over to Namecheap, you want to go to the manage area, when you first purchase the domain. You head on over to the manage area. You want to go to advanced DNS. And it usually is going to have some kind of, redirect record there. You want to delete both of the ones in there. And the first thing you want to do is you want to add a new record, add an A record. For host, you just type in the symbol ACT, and then the IP address is the IP address that we copied over there. So that basically is telling it that this domain Cloudways hosting that club is going to be hosted in this at this server. Now, another record that I like to add is a CNAME record for www, and that just points directly to the URL to Cloudways hosting that club. So if for whatever reason, somebody does put in www, it would redirect to the correct setup that we've got. So once you do that, then it might take a few seconds to propagate, but since we haven't changed name servers or anything like that, it's usually not as long as it would be normally if you were changing name servers, like if you're changing to Cloudflare or anything like that. Sometimes that might take a little while. But I've noticed sometimes like literally like a minute or two, you can jump over and it'll be ready to go. So I'm going to go back over to the SSL certificate area. I'm going to see if now it works. Now that the certificate has been installed for the application, it also lets you do the HTTPS redirection at the server level, which is the best way to kind of handle it without needing any extra plugins or anything on your website. So I recommend to go ahead and do that. And then it lets you know that it's all good to go. So then we'll head on over back to the access details. We'll notice that I have the application URL, the admin panel. So it should, since the SSL certificate was able to be installed, then that lets me know that the domain name itself is actually pointed correctly. So we can just go ahead and click into the admin area. We'll copy the login details from here, and we'll be able to log in. And so now you'll see that basically have the same skeleton setup that we set up previously, but now, we're ready to build out the website. So this is the easiest way to kind of launch things. Now we could have done that with the first, application that we set up when we've got the different applications here. We could have done that just right away with the first one. But I do find that it's a lot easier to have a template set up so that from here on out, I can just keep on going back to this one and cloning it as many times as I want so that it basically, whenever you start with a brand new application, you would still have to install your plugins. By doing it this way, it already has your plugins, your licenses, everything already on there. So you can do that as many times as you want, and you can do it across servers. So if you get to the point where you've got, 5 or 10 different websites on this server, and you don't want to load it up too much because we did start with one of the lowest server possible, which is a $10 a month one. So if you wanted to go ahead and get another $10 a month one, you'd still be able to use this template and clone it into that other server and kind of keep going that way. So this is my favorite setup at the moment. Super easy to launch sites, super simple to get the HTTPS SSL certificates installed and get the plugins all set up, and it does give you the ability to just go ahead and build directly with SERPShaker without any issues. You may, depending on the size of your list, you may time out here and there, but for the most part I haven't run into any issues by using this setup. And if we go over to servers, you'll notice that they are actually, if we go to services, no, settings and packages, they actually have it running with PHP version 7.3. So you can actually change that if you want to. They go all the way up to 8.0, but there might be some, not everything has been tested up to 8.0. So I just kind of go with what the default is, but they are running some of the latest versions of PHP, which makes things a lot faster and work a lot better. So like I mentioned, all the links for everything that I showed are below. And please feel free to leave a comment below if you've got any questions.